Welcome to US Education Hub. So today we are to start with a new chapter which is tissues from class 9 CBSE. So this is your master teacher SUVOPRIYO. Let's start the chapter. Before starting the chapter, if you have ever downloaded a Telegram app from Play Store or iOS, then join our Telegram channel. All kinds of PDFs, workbooks, tests, notes will be given in this channel, and the link of the Telegram channel is given in the description box below. So join the Telegram channel very soon. So let's start the chapter. So what are the types of tissues? Now, if we, before discussing what are the types of tissues, if we ask the question that what is tissues, then what is tissues? Now, number of cells forms or mix up to form a tissue. Then the number of cell which teams up together and forms a tissue, and the number of tissues teams up together to form a organ, and the organs to form organ systems, and from organ systems we the organisms. So if you have to clear the concept of the fundamental unit of life, the before chapter of these tissues, then that chapter will is being uploaded from our channel. Search it in the YouTube and you will be getting it. So let's know what are the types of tissues. There are two types of tissues. One is plant tissue. Now this is a plant tissue, and one is animal tissue. So the tissue which is present in plant is simply different with the tissue which is present in animals. So let's move to the next slide and discuss in detail about the plant tissue as well as in the animal tissue. So what are plant tissues? Now, plant tissues is a collection of similar cells performing an organized function for the plant. Each plant tissue is specialized for unique purpose and can be combined with other tissues to create organs such as leaves, flowers, stems, and roots. The following is a brief outline of plant tissues and their functions within the plant. So the plant tissues is a collection of similar tissue cells, now performing an organized function for the plant. Now each plant tissue is specialized. Each and every plant tissues which are present inside the plant are being specialized for a specified and with a unique purpose, and it can be combined with other tissues to create organs such as parts of the plants like leaves, flowers, stems, and roots. Now the following is a brief outline of the plant tissues. So the following image is the example or image of a plant tissue. So hope you have understood what are plant tissues. So let's move to the next slide. So this is what are animal tissues. Now the tissues which is present inside an animal is called as animal tissues. Now these tissues also has some specified functions, and for which the tissues inside the animals can able to work and help the animal to be survive. So the animal cells are grouped together to form a animal tissues, and these tissues vary in their structure, function, and origin. The animal tissues are divided into epithelial, connective, muscular, and nervous tissues. Now, animal cells group together, a number of cells group together to form animal tissues, and these tissues vary in their structure, function, origin. So each and every tissue has their own specified work or specified function. They have a specified structure. They have each and every tissue has different structure, and they have different as well as origin. So there are some tissues, some types of animal tissues like epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue, nervous tissue. So each and every tissues we will be discussing in this chapter in the later part of the lecture. So let's move to the next slide. Hope you have understood what are animal tissues. So these are the types of plant tissues. Now this is a kind of mind map. Take a snapshot of it. This will help you in understanding the following chapter. Now this is the plant tissue, and then plant tissue is being divided into two branches. One is meristematic tissue and one is permanent tissue. Now the branch of meristematic tissue is not there, and the branch of permanent tissue to be continuous. Like the permanent tissue is being divided by two branches. One is simple tissue and one is complex tissue. Now in simple tissue, we can find it as epidermis, parenchyma, parenchyma, sclerenchyma, and overall this is the chlorenchyma. So the parenchyma and parenchyma is formed as a chlorenchyma, and in complex part we can see as xylem, phloem, xylem vessels, sieve tubes, tracheids, and companion cells. So these all parts is the kind of mind map which will help you to understand the following chapter. So hope you have taken the screenshot of this. So let's move to the next slide. So these is the meristematic tissue, the types of plant tissues, one of which it is meristematic tissues. Now Carl Wilhelm von Nageli coined the term meristem. Meristematic tissue contains undifferentiated cells and which are building blocks of specialized plant structures. So Carl Wilhelm von Nageli, he was the first one to coin the term meristem, and from which meristematic tissue contains undifferentiated. They have similar T cells and which are the building blocks of specialized plant structures. So these are the some building blocks, and these are the building blocks which are being the specialized plant structures. And then meristematic tissues contain living cells with varied shapes. They possess a large nucleus devoid of the vacuole, and the cells have no intercellular space, and the zone where these cells exist is known as the meristem. Now meristematic tissues, those parts where meristematic tissues are being found inside a plant are known as a meristem. And then meristematic tissues contain living cells. Now the cells which are being present inside the meristematic tissues, they are all living, and that's why they used to possess a large nucleus devoid of the vacuole, and the cells have no intercellular space. Now the space which is being present inside the cell, which is called as intercellular, so there is not so much space which is present in this kind of cell. And so the cells of the meristematic tissue divide actively to form specialized structures such as buds of leaves and flowers, tips of roots and shoots, etc. Now these cells have to increase the length and girth of the plant. So these kind of tissues helps the plant to increase in their length, so to increase through their stem and also to increase through their root. Now the cells of the meristematic tissue divide actively to form specialized structures. Now this meristematic tissue help to divide the actively formed specialized structures. Now specialized structure here means the parts called buds of the leaves from which we get the fruits, or like flowers, and then the flowers, and then tips of roots and shoots. These also helps in the growing of the structures, specialized structures like roots and shoots as well. So this is the basic diagram of meristematic tissues. The most upper part is the apical meristem, the middle one is the intercalary meristem, and the bottom one is the lateral meristem. So hope you have understood what is meristematic tissues. So let's move to the next slide. So these are the characteristics of meristematic tissues. Now the characteristics of meristematic tissue are as follows. The cells of these tissues are commonly called as meristems. So, the what were meristematic tissues? In that topic only we have discussed that the cells of these tissues are commonly called as meristems, and the meristematic tissue has a quality of self renewal, and every time the cell divides, one cell remains identical to the parent cell and others form specialized structures. The meristematic tissue has a quality of self-renewal, and every time the cell divides, now the cell starts to divide and one cell remains identical to the parent cell. Now these one cell is having a same or having the similarity with the parent cell, and others form specialized structures and other parts forms specialized structures. They have very small and few vacuoles. The number of vacuoles present in this meristematic tissue are very few, and the structure of these vacuoles are very much smaller. And the meristematic tissue is living and thin walled. The meristematic tissue are living, they are not dead, and they having a thin wall. The protoplasm of the cells is very dense. Now the protoplasm or the cell membrane is very much dense, and then the meristematic tissues heal the wounds of an injured plant. The meristematic tissue tries to heal the wounds. Now normally wound we used to define it as the bleeding, but then plants also have bleeding, but then that is not a red color. The bleeding that we used to cause, like when we cut trees or when we cut a part of the tree, then some secretions are like some secretions which are very much sticky in nature, so those secretions helps the plant. Those are the wounds, and these meristematic tissues is to heal those wounds of an injured plant. Now the cells of the meristematic tissue are young and immature. The cells of the meristematic tissue are very much younger and they are not mature, they are mostly immature, and they do not store food. Now meristematic tissues doesn't store any kind of food. The food is being transported and they has to take the food as a part of energy, and they exhibit a very high metabolic activity. As they do not store their food, they totally convert the food energy into a high metabolic activity for the survival of a plant. So these are the total characteristics of meristematic tissue. Hope you have understood the characteristics of meristematic tissues. So let's move to the next slide. So types of plant tissues in the permanent tissues. So still now we have discussed the characteristics and what were meristematic tissues, and now we will start discussing about permanent tissues. Now what are permanent tissues? In simple words, a permanent tissue in a plant are those tissues that contain non-dividing cells, and the cells are also modified to perform specific functions in the plants. The cells of the permanent tissue are derived from the meristematic tissue. So the simple words, if in common words, if we discuss about permanent tissue, they are the plant are those tissues and they contain non-dividing cells. Now the cells which are present, they doesn't divide with each other, they have the non-dividing, they used to have a normal structure. Now the cells are also modified, they have the modification and to perform specific kinds of functions in the plants, and the cells of the permanent tissue are derived from the meristematic tissue. Now the permanent tissue cells are also fully differentiated, and the cells are large and a definite shape and size. Now the permanent tissue cells are also fully differentiated, and they have the cells are large and definite shape and size. So the cells are having large, that structure in large, and have a definite shape and size. You can see intercellular species being present in between the cells. Now in case that we were discussing in meristematic tissue, so we were saying that they were not having an intercellular space, means a space which is being present in each and organelle of a cell. So we can see in meristematic part, we have seen that there are no spaces, but in this case of permanent tissue, we can see that there are spaces, intercellular spaces having present between the cell organelle. Now the large vacuoles are also present in this cell. So large vacuoles are also present in these permanent tissues, and then the metabolism that occurs in the cells of the permanent tissue is clearly at a lower rate. The permanent tissue in plants mainly helps in providing support, protection, as well as a photosynthesis and conduction of water, minerals and nutrients. The permanent tissue cells may be living or dead. So permanent tissues may be some type of living, as well as they can be found as dead cells in the dead tissues in the structure of plant as well. The permanent tissue in plants mainly helps in providing support. So they all helps in providing support to the plant and helps in protection for the plant, as well as in helps in photosynthesis and conduction of water, minerals and nutrients as well. So hope you have understood what are permanent tissues, and this is a very important as per the exam point of view. So let's move to the next slide. So this is the simple permanent tissue and this is the complex permanent tissue. These are the two types of permanent tissues that are being found inside a plant. So you have seen this is an image of a simple permanent tissue and this is an example of complex permanent tissue. So these are the two parts and we will be discussing about these parts in detail. So let's move to the next slide. So types of permanent tissue, that is simple permanent tissue. Now simple permanent tissue are made of similar cells performing similar functions. Now these are the permanent tissues that are having a similar cells and are performing similar functions, and these are basic packaging tissues in the plants. Now they are the basic packaging tissues which is present inside the plant. So the first one is the parenchyma tissue, the second one is the parenchyma tissue, and the third one is sclerenchyma tissue. So these are the three types of simple permanent tissue as well. So this is the total simple permanent tissue which is being viewed in front of you. So hope you understand the simple permanent tissue. So let's move to the next slide. In detail about the types of simple permanent tissue we will be discussing in the later part of the chapter. These are the types of complex permanent tissue. Now complex permanent tissue is defined as a collection of structurally dissimilar cells and then performing a common function or set of functions. Now complex permanent tissue is defined as a collection of structurally dissimilar, means the cells of the complex permanent tissue are not similar with each other, they are simply dissimilar in nature and then performing a common function or set of functions. They are performing a similar function and also a set of functions as well. Now they are made up of more than one type of cells. So more than one type of cells they are being made up of, and there are two types of xylem and phloem. The xylem is the chief water conducting tissue of the plants. It functions as a conducting tissue for water and minerals from the roots to the stems and leaves, and this is the xylem. So xylem is a chief water conducting tissue. So xylem is presenting inside the water, means the water is being transported to the roots by the process of diffusion through the root hairs. So the xylem is being present in the root and which helps to transport the water and minerals to the stems and leaves for the process of photosynthesis. And then the phloem is the chief food carrying tissue of the cells of the plant. Now there are different kind of vessels and arteries, like arteries and veins that is being present in our body. Like that, xylem and phloem are the two kinds of vessels that helps in the plant to transport different kinds of substances. Like xylem is to transport substances like water and minerals to the stems and leaves from the roots, and phloem is a kind of vessel which is used to transport the food materials from stem and leaves to various other parts of the plant. So this is the total conception of complex permanent tissue. Hope you have understood what are complex permanent tissue and the types of complex permanent tissue as well we have discussed in this slide itself. And these are the types of complex permanent tissue, that is xylem which is water conducting and phloem which is food conducting. So hope you have understood the complex permanent tissue. So let's move to the next slide. This is the basic difference between simple permanent tissue and complex permanent tissue. Now this basic difference, by definition we can see a plant tissue made up of single type of cells. The plant tissue is being made up of the different types of cells. Now the plant tissue made up of single type of cells. In simple permanent tissue you can see that single type of cells helps to build up a simple permanent tissue. Now different types of cells helps to build up complex permanent tissue in plant. Now type of cells contains a single type of cells. Now simple type of cells like contains a single type of cells, and the type of cells in complex permanent tissues is containing of different type of cells. The location found in all parts of the plant. In every and each part of the plant we can see simple permanent tissue, and the location of the complex permanent tissue we can find it in the vascular tissue mostly. And then types are sclerenchyma, parenchyma and collenchyma. And then we have in the complex permanent tissue the types are xylem and phloem. The nature of simple permanent tissue are homogeneous, and the nature of complex permanent tissue are heterogeneous. Now the function of cells in simple permanent tissue, the cell perform a similar function. Now the cells which are being present in the simple permanent tissue, they are having a similar type of function, and the cells which are being present in the complex permanent tissue, they are having different function within each other. So hope you have understood the basic difference and the most important difference which is between the simple permanent tissue and complex permanent tissue. Hope you have taken the screenshot of it. So let's move to the next slide. So this is the types of simple permanent tissue. The first type is parenchyma tissue. Now let's discuss in detail what is the parenchyma tissue. So parenchyma tissue is a type of simple permanent tissue that makes a major part of ground tissues in plants where other tissues like vascular tissues are embedded. Now parenchyma is a type of simple permanent tissue. This is a type of simple permanent tissue and that makes a major part of the ground tissues in plants where other tissues like vascular tissues are simply embedded. They are non-vascular. They doesn't contain any kinds of vascular tissues, and they are composed of simple. Means that these tissues and these cells are having similar, and they are having one type of cells and then living and undifferentiated cells. So they are having all the cells are living, and they doesn't have any differentiation between the cells which is present within the parenchyma tissue and which are modified to perform various functions. So different and specified and modified functions are being given to these cells which are being forming as parenchyma tissue. So this is a basic diagram of parenchyma tissue which is being viewed in front of you in this slide. So hope you have understood what is parenchyma tissue, and this is a first part of simple permanent tissue type. So let's move to the second type of the simple permanent tissue. So this is the second type, which is the collenchyma tissue. So let's discuss in detail what is collenchyma tissue and its structure and the functions of each and every cell present within it. So let's read what it defines. So collenchyma is a plant is support tissue of living elongated cells with irregular cell walls. Collenchyma cells have thick deposits of cellulose in their cell walls and appear polygonal in cross section. Now collenchyma in plants, they are present in plant and support tissue of the living elongated cells and with irregular cell walls. They have irregular kind of cell walls, means they are not regular in nature and they are having living elongated cells. Now collenchyma cells have thick deposits of cellulose. Now collenchyma is having a thick deposition of cellulose over them in their cell walls and appear polygonal in cross section. The strength of the tissue results from these thickened cell walls and longitudinal interlocking of the cells. The strength of the tissue is resulting as the thickened cell walls and longitudinal interlocking the cells. Is a structure, And then collenchyma may form the cylinders or occur as discrete strands and is one of the three ground or fundamental tissues in plants together with parenchyma and sclerenchyma. So these collenchyma is playing an they are present in one of the three ground or fundamental tissues together with parenchyma, living thin wall tissue, and sclerenchyma, dead support tissue with a thick cell walls. So the collenchyma is forming a cylinder in structure, and or can also form as discrete strands in one of the three ground or fundamental tissues. So they can form as the cylinders, and they can also form the other two kinds of tissues. One is parenchyma and one is sclerenchyma. So this is the basic diagram of the collenchyma which we have viewed in front of you in this slide. So hope you have understood what is collenchyma tissue, what the function of the cells which is present inside the collenchyma tissue, and the structure of the collenchyma tissue as well. So let's move to the next slide and discuss the next type of simple permanent tissue, which is sclerenchyma. So this is the sclerenchyma. Now, what is the work, what is the function, what is sclerenchyma, and what are the functions of the tissues of sclerenchyma? Let's discuss in detail. So sclerenchyma tissue are thickened lignified cell walls, and they have which make them the strong and waterproof. Now, where we can find sclerenchyma? We can find sclerenchyma in the tree trunk. Now the wooden trunk of the tree is defined as sclerenchyma. So that is very much strong. They are waterproof. They doesn't get wet or get damaged while rainfall occurs or while we give water over it. So they are waterproof and they are very much strong, which helps for the protection of the tree from inside. And they are commonly classified into support types and conducting forms. So they are also classified as means they are commonly classified as support types. They give support and strength to the tree, and they helps in conducting of the different forms. And then the support sclerenchyma is comprised of sclerites and fibers. These tissue reduces wilting, but it is energetically costly for the plant to create. So it is very much it reduces wilting, and but it is very much energetically costly for the plant to create this sclerenchyma tissue. Now sclerenchyma matures with the surrounding tissue and provides more permanent support than collenchyma, and maintaining the established morphology of the plant. Fibers have tapered ends and can be many centimeters long and comprise of bundle caps and sheaths over them, and the characteristic of the vascular bundles especially in monocotyledonous plants. Now sclerenchyma is matures over the surrounding tissue and provides permanent support. We have discussed now itself, and it gives then collenchyma and then maintaining the established morphology of the plant. And then the fibers have tapered ends. Fibers is having a tapered ends and can be many centimeters long. The centimeters of this tapered of these fibers are many centimeters long, and comprise of bundle caps over it, and they are having sheaths. And characteristics of the vascular bundles especially in monocotyledonous plants, and the bundle sheath may form bundle extensions by spreading to the epidermis, especially in the grass leaves. So let's move to the next slide. So hope you have understood the sclerenchyma, and this is the basic structure of the sclerenchyma tissues. So let's move to the next slide. So now we are in the position to discuss the types of animal tissues. Now the different types of animal tissues are the blood tissue, the bone tissue, the epithelial tissue, the cartilage tissue, the adipose tissue, the nervous tissue, the muscle tissue, and the connective tissue. These all are the types of animal tissues. Now, these one by one we are going to discuss in this lecture. So, till now we have discussed the types of plant tissue and we have defined what are plant tissue and what are animal tissue. So, hope you have understood all the types and all the conceptions till now. So let's move to the next slide and discuss one by one and in detail what are these tissues. So this is the first type of tissue, which is the epithelial tissue. Now, epithelial tissue form the protective covering and inner lining of the body and organs. These tissues were the first to evolve during evolution and were first formed during embryonic development. They develop from ectoderm, mesoderm and endoderm of the embryo. Now, epithelial tissues are having a protective covering and they are giving an inner lining of the body and organs. They are mostly presenting inside our stomach. In the stomach, we can see these epithelial tissue, and these tissues were the first to evolve during the evolution. So these tissues were the first, the earliest most and the oldest most and the first to evolve during the evolution and were first formed during the embryonic development, and they are also first formed during the embryonic development, and they develop from ectoderm, from mesoderm and in endoderm of the embryo. While the formation of the embryo, the first is the epithelial tissue formation. This is a basic diagram, the microscopic diagram of epithelial tissue. So this is what epithelial tissue is as per, and this is one of the type of animal tissues as well. So hope you have understood the epithelial tissue and you have taken what is the screenshot of what is epithelial tissue. So let's go to the next slide and discuss the second type of animal tissue. Before that, let's know about the types of epithelial tissue. One of the type is the squamous epithelial tissue. The second type is the cuboidal epithelial tissue. The third type is columnar epithelial tissue, and the fourth type is stratified squamous epithelial tissue. So these are the types of epithelial tissues we have shown you by the diagram. So take the screenshot. Diagram drawings mostly comes up in the exam. So let's move to the next slide and discuss the detailing of the different parts of this chapter. So this is the bone tissue, which is a second type of animal tissue. So what are the bone tissue? Now this the different parts which is present inside a bone. Now bone is a white color substance. Now inside it different substances we will discuss in detail. Now mostly we know that bone is made up of calcium. It is made up of calcium, but inside it there are different kinds of parts. Now let's know about its parts. The bone tissue is a type of connective tissue of vertebrates. Other types of connective tissues are cartilage, loose and dense connective tissues. So these are the types of connective tissues we have discussed in smaller detail, but then within it. But then before discussing about connective tissue, let's discuss about bone tissue in more detail. So bone tissue is a type of connective tissue. So it is a type of connective tissue, and then it is presented mostly in vertebrates. Now bone tissues are a type of connective tissues, and then bone tissues are hardened or become rigid due to mineralization. The bone tissue forms the skeleton of the vertebrates. Now the bone tissue helps to the formation of the skeleton of the vertebrates. So before the muscles, before the nerves, before the blood circulating heart, before the arteries, veins, capillaries, before all these formations, so the skeleton used to form up, the bones used to form up, and these bones are basically presenting with bone tissue, which is presently mostly in vertebrates. Now the bone tissue is comprised of bone matrix as well as the bone cells, and the bone matrix is the extracellular matrix of the bone, and it is comprised of organic and inorganic substances. The organic component of the bone matrix includes the collagen and the ground substance, whereas the inorganic component is the inorganic bone salts, mainly hydroxyapatite. Now, the bone tissue is comprised of bone matrix. It is comprising of a bone matrix as well with the bone cells. Now, the bone matrix is the extracellular matrix of the bone, and it is the extracellular matrix which is inside the bone, and it is composed of organic and inorganic substances. The organic component of the bone matrix is including with collagen and then ground substance, whereas the inorganic component is the inorganic bone salts, mainly hydroxyapatite. Now, hope you have understood what is the bone tissue, and it is the second type of the animal tissue as well. So this is the basic diagram of the bone tissue that we have presented in front of you in this slide. So hope you have understood the bone tissue. So let's move to the next slide. So this is the third type, which is the adipose tissue. Now, what is adipose tissue? So adipose tissue is a specialized connective tissue consisting of lipid-rich cells called adipocytes. Now, it is a lipid-rich cell, and it is a specialized connective tissue. So before that we have seen the bone tissue, which is also a specialized connective tissue, and now we are able to see adipose tissue, which is also a specialized connective tissue only. So this is consisting of lipid-rich cells called the adipocytes. Now adipose tissue is comprising of 20 to 25% of total body weight. Means mostly it is made up of the fats which is presenting in our food, and these fats are being going and they are being getting stored inside this adipose tissues, and based on its location, fat tissue is divided into parietal under the skin and visceral surrounding organs. Now based on its location, what is the adipose tissue is presenting in our body, so they are present in the divided into parietal under the skin, they are being situated under the skin, and they are being situated the surrounding the means bounded by the organs. So they are being present in these two parts, and depending on the adipocyte morphology, there are two types of adipose tissue. Two types of adipose tissues are there. One is white adipose tissue, which is found mostly in adults, and one is brown adipose tissue, which is found mostly in newborn babies. So this is the basic diagram of adipose tissue, which we are presented in front of you in this slide. So this is the what adipose tissue is and where it is being located. We have also discussed about it as well. And the two types of adipose tissue, one is white adipose tissue, one is brown adipose tissue, and where it is mainly found of the brown adipose tissue, and where it is mainly found in brown adipose tissue and white adipose tissue. So whole we have discussed about the adipose tissue in detail. So we have understood, and so let's move to the next type of animal tissue. So this is the next type of animal tissue, which is the muscle tissue. Now it is a specialized tissue. Now muscle tissue, so it is a specialized kind of tissue, and this tissue which is helping you to show your muscles like biceps and triceps, and they are helping you to show your strength. So let's read what it defines. It is a specialized tissue which is found mostly in animals. Not mostly, it is found in animals only. So which functions by contrasting, by applying forces to different parts of the body. So they are by applying forces to different parts of body. They are applying forces, and then muscle tissue consisting of fibers of muscle cells connected together in the sheets and fibers. So they are having consisting of fibers and of muscle cells, and which are connected in sheets and fibers. Now together these sheets and fibers are known as muscles and control the movement of an organism. So all kinds of movement in our body is being controlled totally by muscle tissue. So there are three type of muscle tissue. So one is skeletal muscle, one is smooth muscle, and one is cardiac muscle. Now what is skeletal muscle? The muscle which is being adjoined by your skeletal system. Now the smooth muscle is present mostly in your means in stomach part, and the cardiac muscle is the muscle which is being present in your cardiac system, means the heart. So this is the movement. This muscles helps in movement and many other contractile functions as well. So the contractile functions are being done by the skeletal muscle, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. And there are three different types of muscle found in the animals depending on their use. So these are the three muscles tissue. And so hope you have understood what are muscle tissue. We have discussed the three muscle tissue as well with you, and defined the each and every muscle tissues. So hope you have understood about it. I hope that each and every slides you are taking going with having a screenshot or noting down in your notebook, because these are very important from your exam point of view. So let's move to the next slide and discuss the next type of animal tissue. Now the next type of the animal tissue is the connective tissue. Now connective tissue is a type of tissue that connects, separates, and supports all other types of tissue in the body. So before and only we have seen connective tissue has an important role play in bone tissue. They have an important role play in the adipose tissue as well. So connective tissue is the tissue that connects and separates and supports all other types of tissues in the body. So they have an important role play in its own tissue, means in its connective tissue, means connecting with the body parts, as well as they have an important role in other kinds of tissues as well. Like all tissue types, it consists of cells surrounded by a component of fluid called the extracellular matrix, which is ECM. Now, however, the connective tissue differs from other types in it, that is, the cells are loosely rather than tightly packed within the ECM, that is extracellular matrix. However, the connective tissue, which is different from other types of tissue, so they are very much loosely packed and within the extracellular matrix. So this is the connective tissue, and this is the structure of the connective tissue. So hope you have understood what is connective tissue. So let's move to the next slide. So this is the next type of animal tissue, which is the cartilage or the cartilaginous tissue. So what is the work, what is the function, and the structure and its location, and what is cartilaginous tissue? Let's discuss in this slide itself. So cartilage is a form of connective tissue. So it is also a form of connective tissue. See what is the importance of a connective tissue in our body. So it is also a form of connective tissue in which the ground substance is abundant and of a firmly gelated constituency that endows this tissue with unusual rigidity and resistance to compression. Now the cells of the cartilage, called the chondrocytes, are isolated in small lacunae within the matrix. Now the cells of cartilage, called the chondrocytes. Now the cells of cartilage, which is called the chondrocytes, are isolated in small lacunae within the matrix, present within the matrix. And although cartilage is the avascular gaseous metabolites, and then its nutrients can diffuse through the aqueous phase of gel-like matrix to reach the each and every cells. So cartilage is enclosed by perichondrium and a sense of dense fibrous layer lined by the cells that have the capacity to secrete the hyaline matrix. So this is enclosed by perichondrium, and they are having a dense fibrous layer lined by cells which is having the capacity to secrete hyaline matrix as well. So this is the basic concept of the cartilage. So hope you have understood the cartilage, and this is the structure of the cartilage that we have shown in the slide in front of you. So hope you have understood what is cartilage or the cartilaginous tissue in a animal tissue or in our body. So let's move to the next type of animal tissue. So the next type is the blood tissue. Now blood tissue is the most vital and mostly can be seen or visualized, but then we cannot understand by the structures that is being shown in this image. We cannot see the structure when it comes from by the bleeding, but then when we observe it through a microscope, the fluid, when we observe it through the microscope, the blood is basically this kind of structure. So let's discuss what it defines. So blood fluid that transports oxygen and nutrients to the cells and carries away carbon dioxide and other waste products. So these we have been knowing from the earlier classes itself, that blood is the only fluid that is helping to transport of the oxygen and nutrients to the cells and carries away the carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide and other waste products like urea and other different kinds of waste products are being, means the carbon dioxide are being released through the lungs by this blood only, and the urea and other kinds of waste products are being released through the kidney by these blood only. So technically blood is a transport liquid pumped by the heart. So blood is being pumped by the heart, and the fresh oxygen which is coming inside our body, so they are being mixed by the process of hemoglobin, and this process is totally being continued in heart, and then it is being pumped by the heart and to all the parts of the body, after which is returned to the heart to repeat the process. So one after the other, the double circulation process occurs in the heart. So blood is both a tissue and a fluid as well. So it is a kind of tissue and it is also a fluid. It is a tissue because it is a collection of similar specialized cells that serve a particular function. So they are similar specialized tissue and they used to serve a particular kind of function. So these cells are suspended in the liquid matrix, which makes the blood a fluid. If blood flow ceases, death will occur within minutes because of the effects of unfavorable environment on highly susceptible cells. Now if the blood circulation has been stopped, if the blood tissue doesn't form after getting up, means we know that tissues cells get damaged after a period of time. Now blood tissue also gets damaged. Now each and every period of time, for a normal human being, the blood ceases, means the blood starts to grow. But then if it ceases to grow, if it doesn't grow, then what will happen? Then they will have some operation which is being done, and this has been made possible by the medical technology. But then if the proper treatment has not been taken, why the blood doesn't grow in a one particular person's body, then by time we will be having death, because the blood is the most vital, and all kinds of tissue still now we have discussed, so they all are important, but among them blood tissue is the most vital. So if it stops to grow, if its flow guts ceases, so the death of a person is obvious. So hope you have understood what is blood tissue, and we have shown the image of the blood tissue as well, what its function, what its structure, and what its location. All we have discussed about the blood tissue. Hope you have understood about it. So let's move to the next type of the animal tissue. So this is the last type of the animal tissue and the last part of the chapter, which is the nervous tissue. Now what is nervous tissue? What is the function of nervous? Why is the need of nervous in our body? Now what is the function and need of the nerve in our body? So if we discuss of this basic question. Now the nerve helps to, means it transports messages either from spinal cord or either from brain. Now mostly the messages comes from brain, but in some cases where there is an urgency of having an important message for having a critical time period. In that cases, spinal cord also used to give decisions of doing or not doing by the body parts. So now let's discuss about nervous tissue. So we have discussed about the workings of nervous, the function, and this is being controlled by two parts of our body. Play parts of our body. One is brain and one is spinal cord. So let's learn about what is the structure of this typical nervous tissue. So, nervous tissue is one of the four major classes of tissues and it is a specialized tissue found in central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. It consists of neurons and supporting cells called neuroglia. So, it is a most and one of the four major classes of tissues and it is having two specialized system. One is central nervous system and one is peripheral nervous system, and then consisting of neurons and has supporting cells called neuroglia. The nervous tissue is responsible for the control of the body and communication among its parts. So nervous tissue is simply responsible for the control of the body. So all kinds of systems and all kinds of tasks that is being performed. So total control of all the workings of our body is being controlled by this nervous system. Now we are having two categories of cells. One is neurons and one is neuroglia. Now let's discuss about neurons. So this is a structure of neuron that has been shown in front of you in the slide. So these root-like structures are the dendrites. This yellow structure is the nucleus and this is the cell body, the bounded outside the nucleus, this blue part, and this is the part called the axon, and these white cells are the Schwann cell and these are being bounded by a myelin sheath, and then this node, this blue node in which the Schwann cell are being present and in which the myelin sheath is being bounded with. This is a node of Ranvier after who discovered this, and these are the axon terminals in which the electrons, in which the electrical energy or the electrical particles used to move and gives the messages. Now there each neuron is not being just joined with each other, they are having a simple space between them through which the electric signals goes through it and which helps us to have the messages over all the parts of our body. The neurons are the highly specialized nerve cells that generate and conduct nerve impulses. So these messages acts as impulses which moves from the neurons to one neuron to other neuron and moves to the part of our body in which the work is being asking to do or not to do. So the typical neuron consisting of dendrites. So these are the root-like structures of the dendrites and the cell body and an axon. So these are being consisting of. And dendrites, what are dendrites? The dendrites are the responsible for responding to stimuli. So any kind of outside response when our body needs to give, so those response is simply and total responsible by the dendrites. So they receive incoming signals towards the cell body and the axons are responsible for transmitting those impulsive signals to the long distances from the cell body. Now the cell body is like a factory of neuron. The total cell body is a factory of a neuron. Number of neurons are being present within that cell body and it produces all proteins and contains specialized organs such as nucleus, this granules and the nasal bodies. So this is what the working of neuron, this is what the working of dendrite. All these concepts, I hope it is clear, from the types of plant tissue to the types of animal tissue, from animals tissue to plant tissue, each and every concept, I hope it is clear. So Thank you for watching the video. Hope all your concepts are simply crystal clear from this chapter. This is an important chapter from the exam point of view, and if you have any kind of doubt, mention it in the comment section. So have if you have not subscribed our channel, then subscribe our channel, and we take lot of efforts to build this conceptual videos for you people. So like the video and try to share the video to those people who are in need, who are wishing to study. So try to share with those people and practice, and subscribe to the channel, and then wait for the next video. Till then, practice and stay tuned. So bye.